Mark, appreciate you taking the time. I was really excited to sit down with you because the Baltimore connection, and I got to know this. There's this rumor that I had when you played at Mount St. Joe in Baltimore, and you played against, which is now my alma mater, Gilman. There's a rumor that you went deep at Gilman from both sides of the plate. Is that true?
I don't remember. I did it a handful of times in high school, so it could easily be true. I called that the Eddie Murray, right? Like when you can go deep from both sides of the plate in the same game, it's called the Eddie Murray. Growing up, watching your dad and Eddie do their things, man, like it was just so cool being an Oriole fan at that time.
Yeah, the reason why I bring it up, the rumor on our side was when we were playing there, and we didn't have a fence, really. Well, they say that there was a fence, not really a fence, but they said, yeah, Mark hit it to the football stands, which felt like it looked 450 to 500
That
feet.
Is true.
You did do that.
I did. That is true. That was left-handed. The football stands were in right field. And yep. There was no fence, and it was one of the furthest balls I ever hit in high school. And I hit it so far that the right fielder just kind of stopped going after it, just because I kind of jogged around the bases even though there was no fence. So that was I do remember hitting that ball at Gilman. I'm not sure if I hit one from the right side that game, but yeah, that was a fun one.
Okay, so there it is. Because I remember looking at that, and I'm going, damn, there's no shot I can come close to there. And it kind of felt like a Happy Gilmore moment where they're like, trying to reach the green in one shooter. That's impossible. Like, I beg to differ. Happy did that, under an hour ago. Well, Mark did that when he played against the Hounds, man. That was a moonshot. Okay. So obviously then the Baltimore roots and the connection. And for those that didn't know, you just mentioned it. You grew up a Baltimore fan. You grew up a Baltimore native. What were other things that you remembered growing up, at least in this area, that kind of resonates with you?
Man, just the ability to have so many different experiences, right? Like, growing up where we grew up in the Maryland area, I grew up in Severna Park, right? So my dad went to Naval Academy. Hey, let's go down to Naval Academy and watch some college sports. Let's get on the Severn River and go on the boat. Let's go to an O's game. Let's drive out to the Eastern Shore for the weekend and maybe go to the beach. Just a great place to grow up and great sports. I have basketball teammates and opponents that went on to play high college and some opponents that went and played in the NBA. A bunch of players from Mount St. Joe played in the major leagues, Severna Park High School, major leagues. So we're proud of our sports, as you know, in the Maryland area. And I was very blessed to be a small part of that.
Yeah, when I look back at that, and as I got older, you were kind of, for my generation, the ones that we looked to, right? You were that Maryland athlete that went on to achieve your goals. Now, and then for you, when you mentioned if it was with my dad or seeing, Eddie on the team or had Jim Palmer in here, you can look at the evolutions of there and kind of look at it. But yeah, Maryland's got a lot of great athletes. It has a lot of great things to offer. And I needed someone else to say that besides me. I think I've been talking for so damn long. But for your journey, you didn't sign out of high school then. For those that didn't know, you had an opportunity, turn that down, go down to Georgia Tech, and really that's where things continue to develop. I think a lot of people sometimes have a hard time understanding how they should develop and where they should go. When you went to Georgia Tech, obviously a good baseball school, but what was your focus then when you were going to make that transition? Because that is a tough choice to say, hey, I can start my professional career now, or I'm going to wait because I think this will better put me in a position 3 years later.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a personal decision, but mainly it was a business decision. I wanted to make sure that I put myself in the best position to whenever I did start my professional career, I was prepared. And so from a personal standpoint, being able to spend my 18 to 21-year-old years around a bunch of other college students and having a good time and going to football games and basketball games and getting an education. I mean, the education is very important as well because you never know if you're going to make it. You think you're going to make it. People tell you you're going to make it. But, I mean, making it could be you get a cup of coffee in the big leagues, but then you've got to get a real job. So education was important. The personal side was important. But I tell people, like, let's be very clear. I went to Georgia Tech and I majored in baseball. I went to Georgia Tech to learn how to become a professional baseball player. The amount of major leaguers that had been coming out of Georgia Tech, Danny Hall has done a great job. It was Nomar Garciaparra and Jason Veritek were kind of like the young guys coming up out of Tech when I was getting recruited. And so I looked at that as kind of a baseball factory, allowing me to hone my skills. And I went in there as a kind of a green young kid from Baltimore, and I left, a man ready to go play in professional baseball. And so those 3 years were extremely valuable for me.
Is there anything specifically where you felt something kind of clicked together, or was it more so of the accumulation of the time and picking apart of what worked for you? Or heck, Mark, I mean, more than anyone, the reps that you consistently were getting. Was it a combination of that, or do you remember one specific thing that sticks out?
Absolutely a combination. I think one thing that I underestimated going to Georgia Tech, in the state of Georgia, you can pretty much play baseball all year. You might have a month or two where it gets a little cold and you're not playing outside, but we're talking about the mid-late 90s here. In Baltimore, I'm only playing outside 5 or 6 months out of the year, right? And then I'm going to play soccer or basketball, whatever it might be. So I didn't have the reps. So that was number one. I think the second thing is I had to be around competition that challenged me. And we touched on Maryland has great athletes, but it's not Texas, Florida, California, Georgia. There's not the amount of players. So we might have 7 or 8 really good players in the state of Maryland, and we might go play on an all-star team together or play in a fall showcase league or whatever. Those kids that I was playing with at Georgia Tech had been around a ton of talent their entire lives. And that, iron sharpens iron. And I think the amount of great players that I was able to surround myself with at Georgia Tech made me better. And then I think the last part of that equation is just understanding that you belong. You go to college, you're around, we're a top 25 program every year. You're around some great players. It's like, am I good enough to start here as a freshman? And it took me a couple months to kind of build that confidence to understand that, yep, I belong here. And I think by the middle of my freshman year, I knew I had what it takes. And luckily my career continued to go in the right trajectory after that freshman year.
Yeah, you were saying about, being ready for pro ball. Safe to say you were ready for pro ball. Then you get drafted 5th overall. And I think the funny story we talked about before is another Baltimore guy whose brother you played with, but Gavin Floyd then goes 4th overall. Well, again, St. Joe, you guys, I'm glad I didn't have to deal with you guys back then. Just as a whole, when I went through there, it was Calvert Hall giving us fits. I got to say, we kind of gave it to St. Joe. But back to this conversation of that was a cool moment, 4 and 5. But then you were ready for Texas. And really, I mean, you spent 86 to 90 games in the minors. With that time, before the other part of it, of the actual baseball side, do you have any minor league story that you remember even from that short period? Because I think those are always the ones that that players seem to hold on to.
I mean, it's funny. I played 14 years in the big leagues, not even a full season in the minors. More weird stuff happens to you in the minor leagues than in the major leagues, just because it's the major leagues. There's a level of professionalism that pretty much everybody has. In the minors, you get every type of person from all over the world. A lot of people. It's like Bull Durham and Major League kind of thrown together, right? You got misfits and guys that have been in the minors forever, and so there's probably not one particular story that stands out right now, 20 years later. But man, it was interesting. I really enjoyed the Arizona Fall League. I thought that was, I'm not sure if it's still like, the best players in minor leagues go every year because I know they protect pitchers. But man, I went to the Fall League and I'm surrounded by all stars, future all stars all around me. And so those 5 or 6 weeks in Phoenix were super cool.
Yeah, they still do that, and you're right. It's a different little situation of how they handle it, but still, are some of the top prospects going out there? Absolutely. But, pitching, especially protecting arms. I mean, Zach, we've been seeing that for the last couple of years. That can be for a different subject. It seems to continue to be a problem. It's been a problem here in Baltimore the last couple of years. But you finally, then you're right. You're on cruise control. You get off to a great start. You hit the ground running, and you put yourself in a position it wasn't going to be if you make the bigs, it was a when. But when you made the bigs, does that still stick out to you, the moment? Is that one big league moment of you stepping on the field there and making your debut? Do you still have that etched in your memory?
Oh, absolutely. There's a few things that happen to you in your life where that moment and then the next morning you wake up different. You feel like a different person. The day that I played my first game in the major leagues, we were playing in Anaheim. By the way, the Anaheim Angels won the World Series the year before. So we're playing the defending champions at their home park in my major league debut. And that's just really neat. The next morning I woke up after my first big league game and I said, I'm a big leaguer now. And I do feel different. And my entire life, I was 5 years old. People are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? A major leaguer. Like, that's it. Well, what else? Nope. I want to be a major leaguer, and I'm one of the few blessed kids that actually got to do that. So yeah, I remember that first game, and I'll never forget my debut weekend in Anaheim.
What'd you do that first game?
0 for 4. I think I might have walked. I think I might have gotten on base, so it wasn't a total loss. But yeah, I started my career 0 for 15, which was a great learning experience because I've always said you're either in baseball, you've been humbled or you're about to be humbled. And I got humbled right away. So I could kind of just get rid of that, whatever it might be, the down, the slump, the ups and downs of baseball. I experienced that right away. And I really had no slumps in college, very few even games I didn't get a hit in the minor leagues. Big leagues is totally different. On a minor league roster, even double A, you're playing a team of 25. Maybe 2 or 3 of those guys are big league players of 25. That just shows when you go face a pitching staff in the major leagues, it's the best of the best of the best. And it took me a little while to understand what type of pitches to swing at. The counts that I was going to get certain pitches, and learning how to hit in the big leagues is only something you can do in the big leagues. Can't simulate that. You can't read books about it. You just have to experience it. And that's why you generally see young players when they first come up struggle a little bit. The guys that just take off right away, they're unicorns because it's not easy.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think people do forget that the big leagues are the big leagues for a reason. And there's a reason why you got to climb all these levels to get there. Oh, and then by the way, typically, if you are a top prospect or you're a top player, you probably didn't struggle a lot. I mean, you just mentioned it. You didn't have, you probably, maybe at some point, but 0 for 15, that sounds like for you rarely, if not ever, did that going into the big league. I know my dad was talking about, he had on his rookie year, started off the first day, I think he had a couple hits and a home run. Then he was 4 for his next 64 or something like that. Wow. So he's sitting there being like, oh God, what the hell am I going to do? And the Orioles stuck with him. I mean, if we're staying in Baltimore here and whatever's in the holiday pipeline is a whole different thing. I asked Matt about what he's feeding Jackson and Ethan because it looks like Ethan might be number 1 overall pick this year. Jackson already was, and Jackson cruised through the minor leagues. Then he gets to the big leagues, and he gets off to a rough start. And people are looking at him going, well, wait a minute. why you're supposed to be this great player. And it doesn't mean he isn't going to be a great player, but to your point, it's these big league guys know more of what they're doing. Their stuff's more consistent. What you just mentioned about understanding what to swing at and you were humbled. That early struggle you think was probably happening right then and there helped you then for the next 14 years.
No doubt. There is no doubt about that, because I learned how to fail and get through the failure. I had a great conversation with Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News. This is probably right before last spring training, or maybe at the end of spring training, when Wyatt Langford, who top draft pick, Texas Rangers, they started making comparisons. Very similar college profile that I had, and Evan asked me, what piece of advice would you give Wyatt? I would just say, when you struggle, because it's going to happen, and it did. He did not have a great rookie year. Started turning it on at the end. Don't go through wholesale changes. Like, you know how to be successful. You wouldn't, if you weren't talented and didn't know how to be successful, you wouldn't be in this position. But what you haven't figured out is how to fail and get past it, because you've never failed. And so when young players fail in the big leagues and go, oh my goodness, I need to change my swing. I need to change the way I do this. I need to change. No. You need to learn how to be better, and you need to know how to be more consistent. Like, it's small little adjustments that you make to get better. It's not wholesale changes. And that was something that I had Rudy Jaramillo, who's one of the greatest hitting coaches of all time. And he looked at me when I was going through that 0 for 15. He's like, kid, you know how to hit. Like, swing at better pitches, take better swings, and it's going to be fine. And like, that type of leadership from, Buck Showalter was my manager as well, told me, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You just can't panic. And sometimes young players will panic when they struggle.
Yeah. And I would argue then what you're saying, it's not the physical skills. You have the physical skills to be in the bigs. That is no problem whatsoever. The physical skills are what got you here. Fair to say, it's the mental side, if you're going to be willing to adjust, is what's going to keep you there and continue to be successful for as long as you are a big leaguer.
100%. And, there's mental toughness, and then there's this understanding. There's baseball IQ, understanding the game. And it's probably 50% mental toughness and 50% baseball IQ. Like, I told people, if you had a combine like we have it in the NFL, and you just lined up every major leaguer, I would be at the bottom of the list every single one of those days. Like, I wasn't the fastest guy in the world. I didn't take the most incredible BP. Didn't have the best hands, but at first base, I understood how to use my hands. I knew how to play the game, and I knew what made me successful. And as a switch hitter, I had to really simplify things because I had two different swings. Mm-hmm. And so switch hitting is a blessing and a curse. And I think you're going to see less and less switch hitters in the future, because analytics and pitchers' repertoires now basically mitigate the effect of right, left, right. There's still a few lefty pitchers that'll get all lefties out, but it's less nowadays. So, from my standpoint, it was just kind of that baseball IQ, understanding what I was good at, being prepared, not over swinging before games. I've seen guys take batting practice so much that by the time they get to the game, they can't lift their bat and they get into a slump. They're like, oh, I need to keep hitting because I'm in a slump. And I'm like, hey, dude, you need to stop hitting. You need to rest. Save your bullets for the game, because you're getting blown up on inside heaters because you're so tired. And that's just understanding who you are and understanding the game.
Yeah, I think when you have the struggles as a player, people always think that you got to put in more work, but more work doesn't necessarily mean you got to go to the cages and try to figure it out. Now, some guys want to do that. There are some guys that are, like we say, that there's gym rats. There's the baseball rats, the guys that just want to be in the cage and go. But you got to find what works for you. I sometimes, obviously I didn't get to anywhere close to the level that you had, but I remember having this conversation with my dad where he said, sometimes you might just have to take no swings. Sometimes you got to let your brain reset. And why don't you try to think of things in a different way instead of trying to go out there and swing yourself to get to a certain point? Because I think that's the part where I don't care what anyone says. And even in this day and age to the previous generations of ball, there really is no true one way to have success. The one thing is you got to figure out what works for you as a hitter. And I'm curious, though, you mentioned switch hitting. And I know there's different intricacies. And one of the switch hitters in Baltimore, Adley Rutschman, right? You can tell a difference with his swing when it's a lefty swing versus a righty. You mentioned briefly, but if you talked a little bit more, what's the biggest challenge? What was the biggest challenge for you then when you had to deal with that in certain matchups? Because there's no way that those swings were feeling even both sides of the plate were feeling great at all times.
No, first of all, two different swings. Like I was a completely different hitter right-handed than left-handed. So I'm right-handed dominant, throw right-handed. So left, my bottom hand was my power hand, left-handed. So I wanted the ball down, and I got long arms, so I wanted the ball out over the plate, and I wanted to create that leverage. And I was a much more pull hitter left-handed. Right-handed, okay, so opposite. So the top end, that's my steering hand. So right-handed, I felt like I could hit anything, but I had a huge hole inside right-handed. Like if more lefties threw hard, luckily, just thank you God that most lefties don't throw 100 miles an hour. If you could get it in on me right-handed, just the way that I hit, like you were going to blow me up. So I sat way more off speed right-handed. I almost like always sat off speed and then adjusted to a fastball. Left-handed, I was always ready for the fastball because I wanted to get that head out there a little bit more, and I wanted to see how far I could hit the ball left-handed. So two totally different swings, and then two different angles. I really struggled if I only faced righties for 4 or 5 days. So I'd see, we'd go into Seattle, just going to throw that out there, and I'd see, all right, we got a 4-game series in Seattle, right. And I'm like, oh, no. I hope I get a right-handed at bat because I'm going to be hitting left-handed against all those righties. I hope I get a right-handed at bat this series. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Then you go to Oakland, and you got you see Zito Mulder, two lefties, and it's like, oh man. So I haven't hit right-handed in 4 or 5 days. Now I got to face the two best lefties in baseball back to back. That's when I started struggling. And then you're like, all right, how do I get this thing back? And so over 162 games, I went through 3 or 4 different hot streaks and slumps. And at the end of the season, you just hope that your hot streaks outweighed your slumps. And some seasons they did, some seasons they didn't. Like I wasn't that much different of a player during my great seasons versus my average seasons, but I probably got hot 1 or 2 more times and my slumps were shorter.
Yeah, I hate when people say about a player, they go, oh, well, he's just really streaky. Well, I hate to break it to people. Every hitter is going to be streaky. Every hitter, the differences of the elite players is that their downs are just not down as long, but it doesn't mean that they aren't streaky and they aren't red hot. That's baseball. And interesting you brought up of saying your mindset on facing guys versus lefties versus righties and sitting breaking ball, using your mind, using what your strengths are and not trying to reinvent the wheel. Hey, I'm going to eliminate something. I know I'm going to get my hands blown up here. I'm going to handle what I can handle. And if it doesn't work out, but I'm convicted with that. I think, again, it goes back to the same thought I talked about. There's no one way to hit, and that includes the mindset of it. And also, too, by the way, I know you said you had some struggles. You're still like one of the few players that had, over 100 home runs in the first 3 years, right? You're one of the few in that list. So clearly, you did pretty good with handling all that pressure.
I think so. That's a good example of when I was young and I didn't have scar tissue. I had less in, like it's. I think it's easier to play when you're young. Everyone says, "Oh, these veterans, you got all this experience." Like for me, experience meant my knees are hurting, my back's hurting, like wrist surgery, knee surgery. Like so, those young years. I mean, 20. I'm not sure what the peak is considered now, but like for me, it was 24 to 30. Like I felt good. Once I hit 30, I felt different. And I have a ton of respect for guys during your dad's era that played for 20 years. And obviously the Ironman streak is something that is just totally like can't even talk about that anymore because of load management, all these things. But like I felt it as I got older. Bat speed. That was when my bat speed started slowing down, and I had to start guessing more. I had to start looking for more pitches. It brings your mind into something like you don't have time to think about your swing when 95 with a slider's coming at you. Like you have to react and you have to rely on your body. And when your body starts failing, your body starts slowing down, that's when it gets harder and harder.
Certainly does. I will say though, by the way, after you turned 30, you did have 2 back-to-back years you had 29, you had 39 home runs. My bad. Then it dropped to 33. And then no, you had 39 at 31 years old. You still got it. You guessed right there, for the most part. I got to know then, moving forward, you had 2 years of travel, bouncing around. Was that the most, I guess, I wouldn't even say it was unnerving, but that was probably the most unique experience for you getting traded in back-to-back years. I mean, you had a quick moment in Atlanta, quick moment with the Angels. What sticks out to you for that year or two that you had with those teams?
I wouldn't trade it for anything. I had so much fun with the new experiences. Baseball is a grind. It is a slog. And sometimes a new environment, new teammates, sometimes it's good for you. The best 2 halves of baseball, maybe 2 of the best 3 halves of baseball in my entire career when I got traded in 07 and 08. Like those 2 months with the Braves in 07 after I got traded and the Angels in 08 after I got traded, I raked. I mean, it's the best I've ever played. Part of it is because there is a little bit more of a pep in your step. You go from a team that's not going to the playoffs to a team that's going to the playoffs. You kind of want to prove yourself. You want to prove to your new team that, hey, there's a reason you traded these prospects for me. I'm worth it. And then I think the last thing is that there's something about getting traded that makes you realize that you're a baseball player, and you just focus. You just lock in. And now maybe a little bit is coincidence. I don't know. But I think that there's something about the new environment, wanting to prove yourself and just being super focused that some guys are like, this is all different and I don't like it. And I got too much pressure. I kind of embraced it and I really enjoyed those 2 years of getting traded.
Yeah, moving around, moving and grooving, but you're right. It can go 2 different ways. You either can thrive or you can let the circumstances kind of mess with you. You definitely thrived, and then you were rewarded. Then you got to make the choice of where you wanted to go. And I know people in Baltimore here are like, well, wait a minute. The hometown kid's not coming back to Baltimore. And we're talking about it at a time. And look, I want the O's to do well. We're talking about a team that wasn't doing well at the time. Yeah, Baltimore had a 15-year span not winning, having a winning season. That was my entire childhood, 97 to 2012 to be exact. But free agency, I mean, your experience with it, what is it like for those that don't know? Obviously you chose New York, but what do you remember about waiting and making a decision there of where you were going to continue your career?
I didn't enjoy free agency at all. A couple of reasons. Number one, not knowing. I had 2 kids at the time, so my 2 oldest kids were born. My youngest came in 2010 with the Yankees, but I wanted to make sure that my family was going to be happy in a city, right? So there's like this outside pressure, but also not really knowing if your wife and kids are going to enjoy whatever city you choose. And then the other side of it is like, I'm a baseball player, and the business side of it is nasty sometimes. I mean, I remember so vividly when the Orioles made me the free agent offer. They said, "We know you're going to reject this, but we have to make you an offer." Okay, and so when I did ultimately reject it, every fan in Baltimore says I'm a terrible person, and I get booed the next 8 years. Like, not really fair.
Uh,
I mean, the Orioles didn't really want me. Let's just be honest. They did not want me. They didn't make a competitive offer. But
yeah.
they got to tell their fans that they made an offer to the hometown kid and he turned it down. So boom, for the next 8 years. Like, I still think that was kind of a raw deal, right? I really wish
Mm.
the Orioles would have told me, we're not going to make you an offer because we respect you as a player and we know you're going to turn it down. But they didn't play that game. They played the game for their fans. So I get it, but I don't like it. And so when I did ultimately choose the Yankees and we win a World Series in the first year in the new stadium, it just validated all of the junk that you have to go through. I mean, with all due respect to every other franchise, right? Orioles included, the Yankees are different. Winning a World Series in New York wearing pinstripes is different. And I almost weekly meet people on the streets, whether it's in Austin, Texas, or Atlanta, Georgia, or LA, or obviously in New York. Someone will pull me aside. Hey, Tex, thanks for '09. Like,
Yeah.
it just means more, and you could feel it. And so I didn't enjoy free agency, but man, I am so glad we won a World Series in New York because it made it all worth it.
It did. And you know what? Not even that. I mean, that's the last World Series the Yankees have won. Crazy to think, right? I mean, the
Shows you
last.
how hard it is. Shows you
Thank you.
as much as everybody says, "Oh, well, we spend a lot of money, we should win." Like, the numbers will tell you that every 30 years, like, you should win a World Series. There's 30 teams out there. Like, if all else is equal, and it's not, but like, it's so hard to win a World Series. The best teams in baseball rarely do it. Now, last year, the Dodgers, and maybe they're about to go on a run that's unprecedented, but you could probably look up the amount of teams that had the best record in baseball that have also won the World Series over the last. There's only a handful over the last 20 years because
Mhm.
the nature of the baseball playoffs is so random.
Super random. And that's why, I mean, I remember talking with Jason Worth about this when the Nats were having their run of being one of the top teams year after year, but then they would get bounced in the first round. And people will go, wait a minute, they just can't play in the playoffs. It's like, well, there's one thing of being able to handle the moments when they get tighter, but it's another thing of the ebbs and flows of what happens once you get in. And that's why, truly, unlike any other sport, if you get in and you're hot and you're rolling on all cylinders, that's why we've seen these crazy runs to the World Series, whether they win it or not, but like the Rockies closing hard and then running through the National League, and obviously Boston ends up winning. I mean, the Nats, when they did win the World Series, were 19-31, and they got in. Their pitching was healthy. They had big time hits when they needed to, and then they go on to win the whole thing, right? So there's so many different moments. And even with the super team, the Monstars that are out in LA right now at the Dodgers, they should be favorites, right? They have, on paper, they are pretty damn good, and on the field they're pretty damn good. But if they don't win, I don't think it's going to shock. It's not going to shock you if they're not hoisting it. I mean, I don't know. It's a conversation where I think people can undermine how hard the game is, and that you guys are people first. And heck, something's going wrong with you, Tex. I mean, that could be a problem right there. If something's going on with the player behind the scenes that you don't know and they're not playing well on the field, that's the human element that no one thinks about. Another human element, I got to know this. Playing in New York, and we've seen people talk about the pressures of playing in a big market. You're going into the Lions' Den. You're going into a place where They are going to glorify you if you do well. They're going to let you know if they think you are stinking up the joint. So do you have any moments that you can remember there of the good and bad with New York? And also, secondly, how did you handle pressure?
Well, I think every good player will tell you they put more pressure on themselves than any fan can put on them. That is absolutely true. That that being said, if it gets so bad that you are playing awful, you know you're playing awful, but you also give yourself a little bit of grace. You can give yourself a little bit of a, hey, I'm working through it. I know my back's been sore and my wrist's been sore, so I know that once I get healthy, I'll be fine. Like you can kind of have that inner dialogue that makes you feel better. The fans are still booing you though. That's the tough part about New York is that I've heard Derek Jeter get booed. I've heard Aaron Judge get booed. Like the last two captains have gotten booed. So I'm definitely getting booed at some point, right? I think that it's great for certain guys because it keeps you motivated. You see players that you've never heard of. Like as a casual baseball fan, you've never heard of this player. They go to New York and they become an all-star because that pressure from the fans actually makes them a better player. They focus more. 162 games, even if they focus for 20 more games, that's a good season and a bad season, or a good season and a great season, right? So it can really help you. It can crush other players. There's other players that have gotten traded or signed with the Yankees, and like, this is not a good fit. Like I could tell right away, this is not a good fit from a personality standpoint, just from the way that they handle the pressure, whether it's from the fans or the media. For me, when it was good, it was really, really good, and I absolutely loved it. When it was bad, my saving grace was my family. That I could go home when I was an 0 for 15 in New York was really tough, especially if you're losing. If you're winning, they can take the 0 for 15. But if you go for 15 in a series and you get swept, you're getting booed in game 3. There's no doubt. I was blessed that I had a wife and kids that loved me enough that when I got home, I could get away for that half of the day. And so, for me, my faith really helped me. My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ does not care if I go 0 for 4 or 4 for 4. He doesn't. And that really helped me get through tough times in New York when I was not playing well.
Yeah, you got to find something to be able to reset your mind, be at peace, right? And that's the human element side of it. You mentioned, Derek Jeter, Aaron Judge. I mean, Judge with the playoff struggles, right? Fans let him know, but they also then cheered him when he was the MVP type player, pushing for records there and being being the face of the franchise. After then it was Derek. I'm curious because at that time with those teams, you were on the Yanks then with Derek and A-Rod and two guys. Like there was star power there and the criticisms were heavy. Is there anything that you saw from Derek even specifically, because he's the one that's dealt with it? I never saw him waver, even when I was a kid and watching him through any good or bad. Do you remember any moments like that kind of stood out to you that really impressed you with him?
Derek is the most consistent player that I've ever been around. And I'm not talking about consistency in performance. I'm talking about consistency in character, in attitude, in the way he handles himself. There are certain players, you've been around them, Ryan, that when they go for 4 for 4, they're the most jovial guy in the locker room. And then they go for 4 with a couple of Ks. You don't want to talk to them because they're the worst guy to be around. I mean, Derek was so consistent, and he had to be. He's kind of a throwback. He wasn't flashy, although he was good looking and talented and all the things in New York. Like he wasn't a flashy guy. He wasn't somebody. Even though he was kind of before the Twitter era, he would not have been a Twitter guy, right? He would have not have been a guy that self-promoted all the time. And his consistency of preparation, he did the exact same thing every day. His batting stance never changed. His swing path never changed. The way that he took ground balls before the game never changed. And you might say, oh, well, if he would have adjusted something, he had an amazing career, one of the greatest careers in the history of baseball. And it was because he was consistent every single day. He knew who he was, great teammate. And I used to tell young players, they come in spring training, whether it was a guy that got traded or a young kid coming up, I'd be like, just watch Derek. Watch what he does.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, go ask Derek. And that was a piece of advice that Tino Martinez gave me. Tino was working around the team as a special assistant my first year with the Yankees, and I had played against Tino for years. So we had a good rapport being two first basemen. We had dinner one night in Tampa in spring training, my first year in 2009 with the Yankees, and he said, just follow Derek. It'll make your life so much easier. And I tried as best as I could, but dealing with the media, dealing with fans, dealing with the ups and downs, Steinbrenner family, all the things you have to deal with the Yankees, he was the best at it.
Certainly was. And the reason I bring that up is I could never tell when it was good or bad. I could never tell what was up with Derek. And that's a good thing, right? Because I know exactly those guys where you can tell when things are going well. It is clear as day, and you can tell when things are going as bad as they possibly can be, why their body language, about how they approach the game, and what they think that they need to do to continue to be successful, that varies. And as we kind of wrap up here, then I want to go down memory lane for you then. You mentioned the World Series, but is there any moments that as a player, whether it's in New York or anywhere else, we talked about the debut as well, is there any games that stick out to you, or moments in the big leagues, doesn't have to be on the field, that you still have kind of like on repeat in your mind?
Absolutely. There's 4 or 5 home runs that I hit that will always stick out, and moments that as I was running around the bases, I thought to myself, I just hit a home run, right? So my first home run in the big leagues, hitting right-handed in the ballpark in Arlington against Ted Lilly, first major league home run. And I'm running around the bases, and I tell myself, I just hit a home run in the big leagues. 05, my first All-Star game, I hit a home run in the All-Star game. Dontrelle Willis, again, right-handed, Dontrelle Willis, opposite field home run. And I'm running around the bases saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just hit a home run in an All-Star game. World Series. So hit a home run in the World Series, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just hit a home run. That was Pedro Martinez, left-handed. My very last home run in the major leagues was a walk-off grand slam against the Red Sox in Yankee Stadium. That is something I watch that every now and then. Like, it'll pop up on my Twitter feed, or someone will send it to me, and I still get goosebumps watching that home run because I remember what it felt like in the last week of my career, because I knew I was retiring. I'd announced my retirement in August of that season, couldn't do it anymore physically. And we hit a walk-off grand slam against the Red Sox. It's just like, how cool is this? So those are ones that I'll always remember. As a home run hitter, I tell people, they're like, hey, Tex, you miss playing baseball? I'm like, I don't really miss playing baseball. I miss hitting home runs. And I will, till the day I die, I will miss that feeling of just connecting on a perfect pitch, seeing that ball go over the fence and jogging around the bases, because there is nothing cooler in sports.
Yeah, there really isn't. And I remember that granny specifically too. And I also love every way that you just described it, and you bringing it back up. You're also reminding of this. It's fun. Baseball's supposed to be fun. And even though you've been in the big leagues and you're a grown adult, you still have that kid's excitement for it. Like, I can't believe I just did this. I think that is so genuine. That's unbelievable. And I hope that people recognize that's it still means the same. If you're lucky enough, it should still mean the same then to when it is years before. Now, last thing, I know that was a positive, but I got to know on the other end, is there a pitcher that you are happy you never have to see again?
There are a few. I joke that the reason I signed with the Yankees is that I didn't want to face Mariano Rivera anymore.
Oh, man.
Like he was just impossible to hit. I went 1 for 9 with a walk, and my one hit was a broken bat bleeder. Like he was impossible. But there were probably two starters that stick out that completely owned me. One was James Shields, cutter changeup. Like I could not see his cutter looked exactly like his fastball. And then as soon as I tried to speed myself up for that inside cutter, he threw me a changeup down and away. Like he owned me. And then Justin Verlander, I hit one home run off of him. And once he realized, like, I thought that I could hit him, then he had me. Like I was getting giddy because I took him deep once, so I can get him again. And I was over aggressive, and he would throw me like BP fast, like 2-0 BP fastball that I'm just ahead of, and I roll over to second base, and I can like almost see him like smirking, like I got you again. There's a reason that Shields had a great career. Justin Verlander is arguably the best pitcher of our generation.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. Great stuff, super competitor, and he was smart. He is smart. And he owned me. So I'm glad I don't have to face him anymore.
Three greats at the time. Shields, I think people do forget that James Shields used to deal. And
big game James.
Big game James. Mariano too. Imagine just, hey, who's a guy just throws essentially one variation of a couple different pitches, right? It's a fastball, but then one fastball goes this way, other one goes the other way. Good luck.
Yep.
Right? It's that simple. You should hit that, right? No.
Nobody could.
No one could ever do it. Last thing, if you could then give advice then to this next generation or somebody else that's involved in the game, either chasing their goals, dreams, dealing with failure, what would it be?
You've got to find the joy in the game. This game is so, especially as a hitter, this game is so hard to play. You have to find the daily joy and the daily love, because if you don't love it, whether you're a high school player, college player with aspirations, if you don't love it, you will never work hard enough to get better at it, to get to that level, or you will get to the minor leagues and the daily grind will crush you and you'll just quit. I saw so many talented players come up through the minor league. As a big leaguer in spring training, you see them every year, right? So the top prospects come up in spring training. They might have one good year in the minors. They come back the next year, something's different. If you're not willing, if you don't appreciate the game, if you don't love the game, if you don't find that daily joy, it'll grind you up and spit you out. So understand that it's hard. Know that it's not going to be easy. Know that you're going to have a ton of struggle. Know that you're going to hurt a lot. It's 162. You're going to hurt a lot during the season. But if you can figure out a way to love the game and find that daily joy, you have a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
It has to start somewhere. It has to start with you, and you got to be passionate about it, right? No matter what you decide to do. If you don't love it, you can't find passion, joy with it, you'll be miserable. It doesn't matter how much you want to try to obtain something. That's life, right? It's not just baseball. But specifically we're going to be 162 and that's your aspirations, and you're going to be away from family and doing work for 8-9 months. Yeah, you better like it. You better love it, or you're going to resent it a lot. So, Mark, I appreciate everything. Thank you for taking the time. Look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thank you, Ryan. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.